Okay, this is meeting number 10 for the hearing for appeal number 2023-01. I believe tonight we're going to move forward with public comment.
Can you address the planning commission?
Sure. Sure.
I guess technically it's township exhibit?
So,
Question mark?
I guess it can be. I marked the last time township exhibit 2. I didn't move that into evidence, I don't
Okay.
think, so I'd like to do that.
Which one was that? Do you have
That was, I believe it was a letter from Coyle, testing Coyle, dated November 20. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it. What exactly? I didn't bring the transcript with me.
Okay.
So this would, if it is township exhibit, it'd be township exhibit 3.
There's going to be another hearing, so.
Can you turn the mic on, please?
T2 is Carroll Engineering letter dated 11/15/23.
Testing. She asked for Mike.
I know it's-
All right.
All right, so T2 was Carroll Engineering letter dated 11/15/23. Mark, do you have any objection to that being in the record?
You see the letter?
He doesn't have it with him.
I think I know what it is.
It's
11/15/23. I mean, Adrian, if you wanted to wait until, we're gonna have another hearing.
Is that the review of the special exception?
I think so. 11/15/23.
I believe it was Carroll Engineering's letter to Fred Ebert before this one's special exception.
Oh, yeah, this was before the hearing started.
I think we put it in the record. I think there are like 3 of them.
If there's an issue, we can wait
We'll
till
deal with
next
it
time.
next
And then, honestly, probably the easiest thing would be just whatever you have and just make sure it's all done.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So we'll make this T3. So T3 will be the Township Planning Commission letter dated September 19th, 2024, regarding, I guess, review of River Point drip irrigation fields. And it's a letter from the solicitor of the township, Attorney Karasak. Mr. Teal, I know you're here. If you wanted to just come in, Andrew, I don't know. I guess it's I mean, you're the chair of the planning commission, right, Mr. Teal?
What was that?
You're the chair of the planning commission?
Yes, I am
All right.
chair.
Do-
Is
do you-
this live?
Yeah, do you want to just swear him in?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, Mr. Teal,
Now, maybe it is now.
Speak loud.
I can speak louder?
Yeah.
I can probably speak without the mic. However, yes, I am Robert Teal, the chairman of the Upper Mount Bethel Township Planning Commission.
And Mr. Teal, you were aware that at the last meeting, there was a motion from the zoning hearing board to send this project back to the planning commission for review in accordance with a specific ordinance that was raised by
I am aware of
Mr.
that.
Cousins. And did the planning commission meet?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and when did that occur?
The meeting was last night
Okay.
at the township building.
Okay, and that was for review of this project?
One of the items on the agenda was a review of this project for a recommendation.
Okay, and what date did you say that was?
September 18th.
18th. Oh, it was last night, okay. And applicant was there?
Yes,
Okay, and he presented the project. Planning Commission obviously met about this project prior to the beginning of this zoning hearing, right? And when was that? Last January, February, something like that?
over the last couple months, I guess.
Okay. What ultimately was the recommendation, if any, of the Planning Commission after review of this?
If you would care, I can read it to you.
Please.
I presented this in writing as required by law, I believe, to the board, to your zoning hearing board. This letter, as previously stated, was drafted by our solicitor, Ron Karazak, and a synopsis of what we did last night. It says, "Dear Mr. Graziano," that's our township manager, "I am contacting you in capacity of our duly appointed solicitor of Upper Mount Bethel Township Planning Commission. Pursuant to the zoning ordinance 7-405, referral to the Planning Commission, the Township Board has asked the Planning Commission recommendation for placement of the drip irrigation disposal field as a special exception in the R1 residential zoning district. While the Planning Commission has never made a recommendation in this matter, it is reluctant to do so at this point, which there are 9 meetings prior by the commission, and the Planning Commission was not a part of. As such, the commission would not be a majority of issues upon the recommendations would be made. This being said, the motion made by Commissioner Potter and duly seconded by Chair Teal was unanimously passed 5-0. The Planning Commission is making no recommendation."
Okay, just to clarify, when you mean no recommendation, how it's stated in the letter here, that means that they're not making a recommendation for or against?
That's correct.
I don't know, Mr. Cousins, if you have any other questions for Mr. Teal?
Certainly no questions, Mr. Teal just commented, this is probably why it should have been referred to planning commission prior to this, pursuant to the ordinance. I only raised it, at the last meeting that we had, but.
And are you indicating that the township was not aware of this section of the ordinance to suggest that it go to planning before August 22nd, 2024?
I'm saying that it's a zoning ordinance for the zoning board.
All right. But the township was aware that, well, obviously the township was aware that it's the township's planning commission, that this went to the planning commission prior to the start of the zoning hearing, right? The zoning hearings?
I'm aware that certain things have been submitted to the planning commission. I'm not aware of the scope of what's involved at that point.
I'm not sure whether we have it here tonight, but we have a letter from the township zoning officer and a letter from the township engineer to the planning commission a year or so ago, reviewing the plan and sending their reviews to the planning commission. We have transcripts where the planning module, the special exception were reviewed by the planning commission. There's just no question that the planning commission has known about this for a long time.
Be tough to argue that, right? We had three meetings of testimony about how everybody in the real estate world knew that this was coming and was coming for quite some time, so it was difficult to understand how. It wouldn't, I mean, I don't know. Okay.
I'm not saying that the planning commission wasn't aware of the proposed project. As we've heard in testimony, the project has changed over time, and so what has been provided to the planning commission in prior iterations over a year ago is not necessarily what has been presented to this board.
And that's factually incorrect.
I was gonna ask, what
I'm not
has
aware.
changed?
I'm not aware, and I can't sit here and testify about what has changed, but we have heard testimony that certain things were presented that were no longer in this special exception hearing
Like what?
application.
Like what? The only reason I ask is, you're not calling the township engineer to identify what those changes were.
Right.
Yet it's something that you're arguing that, it sounds to me, that the board should consider.
No, I'm not asking the board to consider anything at this point. All I'm doing is pointing out for the record that we believe procedurally this should have gone to them earlier. Now, is it my fault for not bringing it up earlier?
I'm not
Perhaps.
suggesting that, no, I'm not suggesting
but-
it was your fault, I'm suggesting that, I don't know.
I think it's
Is
very-
there any disagreement that the board can make a decision without a recommendation, one way or the other?
I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that says they have to, if the planning commission decides they're not gonna make a recommendation, then there's nothing that can keep this board from making a decision.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Deal, please.
Yes, sure.
That is the end of my testimony.
Okay, yep. If you need, unless there's
Any
anything
further-
else that,
If you need any further clarification that I can help, I would be glad to testify or whatever. All right?
we appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mark, you didn't have anything from Mr.
No.
All right. I think where we left. Why this is not working. I think where we left it off were, I think we had certain party opponents that maybe wanted to wait until tonight to give comments. We're not gonna put a strict time limit on it, but please don't abuse it, okay? We're gonna come back, we have to come back. Mr. Blasey, unfortunately, was not able to be here tonight. He is, I think, watching. We're gonna give him an opportunity to come back and give summation, but the goal tonight here is to try to get through everybody's comment tonight that wants to give comment tonight, because I think I would like to dedicate at least the next hearing, at least a decent amount of time to the board for deliberation, okay? Because there's been, 10 meetings of information that I think needs to be considered, thought about. I think there's a lot of, I think that's gonna take some time. So that's the goal. Like I said, everyone's an adult. Please don't abuse this. I think there are gonna be a lot of the same complaints. So, please keep that in mind. So I think where we left it off, I know I had, Mr. Joy did give comment last time. Mr. Tripoli, I think you did, right? Mr. Friedman did, Mr. Friedman, did you ever request specific party status, or was your comment just as public comment?
Just a comment.
Okay. And then I had Mr. Peter Coyle. Is Mr. Coyle here tonight? No, okay, so we don't have to worry about him. So those are the 4 people that I had, that had an opportunity to give comment, so we're gonna start from there. Is there anyone here that has public or has party status that has not given comment yet?
I've given comment, but I had other points that I wanted to bring up, if possible. Not very long.
Okay. Okay.
Not long, not long.
2 seconds after I ask us all to be adults and everybody wants to go 2 or 3 times. Okay. Hang on.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I just want to mention that Fred Clark will be here later.
Okay,
He's already been-
yes. Okay, Corey, if you want, yeah, we can take you, yeah, Corey, if you want to, yeah. And just to clear everyone, so when you come up, you're gonna get sworn in, just state your name, address for the record, and then it's all you, okay?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. It's Corey Ekman, 1108 Potomac Street. Listening to last meeting, Mr. Tripoli talked about being approached to sell some of his land to the developer for drip irrigation. I think it's important to know if anyone on this board knew about it, if anyone from this board contacted Mr. Tripoli about selling. I would like to see you ask each board member, Mr. Chair, if they knew anything about it. I would also ask this board to consider if your home was next to this site, the grass that grows on the drip field can not be fed to cows for human consumption. But what about the deer that passes through to graze and a hunter shoots the deer to feed his or her family? What is the difference? What is the difference if it's a cow? What is the difference if it's a deer for human consumption? This drip field could harm residents not only next to the site, but possibly the family the hunter takes the deer home to feed. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Joy, if you want to come up, we'll do Mr. Joy, Mr. Tripoli, we'll get those out of the way, and then whoever we have.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I apologize for coming up the second time. Last time I was here, I looked for my notes, they were in my car. I tried to go off the cuff there, and I didn't get everything out that I needed to say. Good evening. From 2006 to 2023, I worked for one of the largest land developers in New Jersey. The biggest thing I learned was the value of maximum return on investment property. What I'm about to say is all my opinion. Why is RPL so adamant about using residential zone land for an individual, for a industrial waste drip field? I believe it is because using their industrial zone land for a drip field would lessen the amount of land available for structures, which can be sold or rented. The more land for structures, the more return on the dollar. Could it also be that prospective tenants and buyers would not want to see, lease, or buy property next to a drip irrigation field? I can't believe or fathom that there is not a parcel of land on RPL's property that is industrial zone that is not suitable for a drip field. So RPL wants to put it behind residential zone properties on Potomac and Summerfield Drive, out of sight, out of mind, not their home, who cares? I can't understand or comprehend how putting a drip field behind residential properties is bettering the area or the community as a whole. My opinion, it is not. More buildings, more people, more traffic. It's all more calls for emergency services. We don't have our own police department. We have a volunteer fire department and an ambulance service in Bangor that's 15, 20 minutes away. As far as I'm concerned, as a retired police officer of 30 years, it's totally insufficient. It's not going to work. In conclusion, if the drip field is allowed to be built on residentially zoned land, and if there's a catastrophic failure, which is always possible, our aquifer would be destroyed. We might as well lock the door, turn the lights off on the way out, because UMBT would not have the resources or funds to handle such a disaster. Lastly, Mr. Manzi, with all due respect, you brought up Ocala, Florida. $1 billion homes. I called Ocala, Florida. They don't have a drip irrigation field for industrial use. What they have is a water reclamation facility, two, that is for sewage, for commercial and residential use, not for industrial use. Thank you.
Mr. Triplett?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Joe Tripoli. My wife and I live on 65 Sunrise Boulevard in Mount Bethel. It starts on the corner of Potomac and Sunrise. It goes back 122 acres and it's preserved. What I did was, when all this was going on, I went to Bob Calora and had him print out a drawing of the whole area. Then I drove down to the tax assessor's office in Easton, and this very nice woman named Rose showed me how I could access all of the owners, which is a public record, of the owners of the area. So then I went back, and I have the drawing there. And it turns out that there are 12 residences, 12 owners of record that directly contact Ronnie Engel's 90 acres. I can give them to you, but I don't think that's necessary.
Right. Just to clarify, you're talking about the subject the subject property? That border the subject property?
The 90 acres are surrounded by 12 properties, according to the tax records in Easton. And some of them, just for example, are Twin Gap Farms, 96 acres of farmland. Another Twin Gap Farms, 105 acres of farmland. And then the other ones, a lot of them are on Summerfield. But anyway, so you got 12 directly in contact with Ronnie Engel's property. Then you got another 30 that are adjacent to Ronnie Engel's property. And a lot of them, maybe half of them, are on Summerfield. And then on the other side of Potomac, where I live, there's another 12, okay? So that's just the amount of residences that are there. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was the fact that if you go on the Upper Mount Bethel Township website, your official website, there's a icon there called RPL, RPL Water and Sewer. If you click on that, there are 3 drawings that come up from Ebert Engineering, and they're titled Drip Zone Layout, Conceptual Water System, and Conceptual Sanitary Sewer System. Now, I printed them out and then expanded them and then taped them all together because they were so small you couldn't read them. Now, on those 3 drawings, it shows all of the warehouses, and I believe there's 13 of them. Each one of those has a lift station attached to it. And then those are piped up to another lift station, which then pumps over to a treatment plant, which is on the southernmost portion of the property, which is where,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but are the plans that are on the website the same plans that were submitted as part of this?
I
They are?
don't know.
Okay, okay. The zoning officer is saying that they are the same, so I just wanted to I didn't want him to go into this and then it be different plans that were submitted. I didn't want the plans that are on the website that you're referring to be not the same ones that were submitted here. So they are the same, so I just wanted to
well,
clarify.
I don't know if they were submitted here because we don't have access to those drawings, just you guys do, right?
That's why I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that they were the same plans, because if they were not the same plans, and he submitted different plans, you could go on to into this diatribe about these plans online that are not the plans that the board has to consider.
I believe they're the plans that you
We
guys.
clarified that, that's all I
But
wanted.
my point was, there's elaborate drawings showing the sewers and everything, and then it goes to a treatment plant, and then it goes, and then it stops. And it stops when it's supposed to go to Ronnie Engel's treatment, to the drip irrigation. And my question is, how does the sewer water get from the property, because it's not connected to Engel's property. Engel's property is across the street. So,
Do you want Mr. Kaplan to clarify that? Because I think there's been extensive testimony by
Well,
Mr. Ebert, and, I mean, it's going back a ways, but
there's no drawing showing how the sewage gets from the treatment plant to Ronnie Engel's property, and there's no drawing that shows how the 22 acres of drip irrigation go into the land. So, my question is,
That's just not accurate.
Well-
We presented,
please speak in the mic.
we presented complete plans showing exactly what Mr. Tripoli says is not shown. There are exhibits in this proceeding.
are those not available at the township for you to review?
No,
Did you show up at the township and ask if you could see the plans?
I went online,
But if they're at the township, I don't think anything that prevents you from showing up and asking to see them.
They're in this record.
all I'm saying is, there's no drawing that I've seen showing how the sewage gets to the 90 acres and how it's distributed.
On break, we can go through the,
Just, sir, you testified before, and I think you testified that you were not here at all the meetings. Is that correct?
I've been to every meeting.
And you heard Fred Ebert testify about this, didn't you?
I heard him testify, he held up a half-inch plastic PVC pipe, and he said, this is what's going into the land. That's what he showed.
Did you hear his whole testimony?
Yes,
Okay. Did you see drawings that he presented?
no.
Did you ask to see the record in this proceeding?
No, I didn't know we were allowed to see the drawings.
You're a party, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
I have no further question.
Well, if there's a drawing, I'd really like to see how the drip irrigation is laid out, because Mr. Blasey asked how close are those drip irrigation lines to Summerfield? and nobody can answer the question at the time. So,
I don't know when I don't know what day he asked that.
well,
But I'm almost positive that Mr. Ebert had said that in his testimony. I don't know what the answer is.
okay, well,
with
then
it, but-
maybe you could just show me the
Okay.
drawing.
Okay.
Okay. My other comment is, if you look at SK1, which is your basic layout, it shows Ronnie Angle's 90 acres as drip irrigation field A. Now, nobody has mentioned that there's a drip irrigation field B, which is on the property.
It's been talked about multiple times. There's another piece on our side of Potomac that is B, but we did not ask for a special exception for that property.
All right, so you're only considering A.
Only considering what they're calling Ronnie Angle property.
Okay, but does the board know that there's a drip irrigation field B that nobody's talking about?
Joe, excuse me, your point is 100% valid. I remember months ago questioning Mr. Ebert about how he's gonna get, the effluent around. And we talked about lift stations and the pump house. When you have time, please stop down and look at the official readable maps and prints. They
Well,
have
you
to show
have
a
one
piping
here?
coming across.
Is there a drawing here?
Did you let him finish? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if there's a drawing here. This is public record. You have to be able to see it down at the township building. I wouldn't trust what I see online only because detail may not be there, but it has to be there. So when you get time, go down, everyone will help you, look at the official readable stuff and see what you come up with.
Okay.
That's the best thing to do. And I asked the same question months ago. And I remember us talking about, I don't know if you were there, if you remember, probably when, what was it, the second or third meeting when he came down? So we're back in then. And I asked him the same thing about transmission, lift stations, how many, where. And we talked about the transmission of the lines over. The only thing I don't recall is if we were ever given an exact placement or spacing of the lift field, I'm sorry, of the drainage field,
The layout.
the individual
No,
fingers or
no,
anything.
My testimony was, no, that gets part of the DEP process later on.
Okay.
All of the testing was done, all the stuff you saw, that's part of the.
Joe, stop down and look at the real stuff down there.
Okay,
Um,
I'd like to do that.
The prints are as big as that thing behind you, so it's real easy to see.
That's not mine.
No, I'm saying they're that big, so it's easy to see the detail on
Okay,
them. Do
okay.
that.
The only other question I had was on the treatment plant itself that shows on SK1. I believe you guys are up to SK3000 now, the drawing, the layout drawing. But it shows a treatment plant that I guess Mr. Ebert was going to design. And my only question is, I've been in treatment plants and they all smell like treatment plants. So my question for Mr. Ebert was, is this treatment plant that he's building is gonna smell like a treatment plant? Because it's located on the southernmost part of the property, of the developer's property, which is where the old Saddle Club was before they moved it over, which is directly next to all the houses on Sunrise Boulevard, which is where we are. So I just was wondering, is it gonna smell like a treatment plant?
You were here for Mr. Ebert's testimony? You were here?
Yes, I was.
And you were a party status at the time? And do you recall me giving everyone that had party status, if they have any questions for Mr. Ebert?
At the
to
time,
ask him?
I was not, I didn't claim party status, then I researched party
No,
status and
you
then
were
I.
from the beginning, I thought.
No, he was not.
All right.
Okay,
I
that's
mean-
all I had. Thank you.
I don't know, Mark, if you can answer that question at all about odors? Yeah, okay. All right, who would like to go next?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Good evening. My name is Allison Heinzone, and I'm commenting tonight on behalf of Martin's Jacoby Watershed Association, where I've been a board member for over 3 years. The watershed is approximately 100 square miles and includes all of Upper Mount Bethel Township, as well as our neighboring townships and boroughs. Allegheny Creek is one segment of its 150 stream miles. Our mission is to promote the stewardship of and to protect and to enhance the watersheds of northeastern Northampton County. With that said, our Watershed Association urges you to deny the special exception that RPL is requesting to allow sewage disposal fields in an R1 zoning district. It is not inappropriate in public use as the disposal field is a primary component of a wastewater treatment facility needed to facilitate RPL's business endeavor. Upper Mount Bethel Township has no central water system, and most of our residents rely on private wells for drinking water. That is why it is vital that all township officials, including this zoning hearing board, consider groundwater protection a top priority when reaching decisions. In Pennsylvania, the importance of our right to clean water was codified by passing the Green Amendment to our state constitution more than 50 years ago. The amendment declares that the people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. The Watershed Association believes that the scale of the overall RPL project and its waste treatment system, including the proposed drip irrigation system, are unprecedented in the region, let alone our township. Its scale alone requires that the township proceed with utmost caution in making each decision regarding this project. In addition to its immense scale, several key unknown components of the project prevent you or anyone from making a suitably informed decision at this time. Who will be the tenants of these mega industrial structures? What will be the composition of the waste being treated? And how much waste will be treated and result in how much effluent? There are several recent and local instances where water sources, both streams and wells, have been contaminated by disposal of toxic substances or treated effluent. These include toxic dumping by area lighting in Warren County, the filling in of slate quarries in West Bangor, and poorly treated wastewater disposal when Great Wolf Lodge opened in 2005. Both surface and groundwater, including residential wells, were tainted in these incidents. The Great Wolf incident is most concerning related to the situation that you're addressing with RPL. Despite Great Wolf's experience with similar resorts and its intention to be a good corporate citizen, there were several problems with its wastewater disposal in its first year of operation, resulting in DEP fines of over $830,000. The violations were attributed to a few different factors, including occupancy exceeding projections, a faulty grease trap clogging the system, and weather issues. In short, Great Wolf had multiple problems with its wastewater treatment, even though it was designed with more complete and pertinent information than what RPL has at this time. There are several other concerns with this drip irrigation proposal. The site is elevated in relation to its surroundings, so it is a primary recharge area for the local aquifers supplying the residential wells. Adding 100,000 gallons of effluent a day will definitely affect the aquifer. The location of these proposed fields are such that during a heavy rain event, the chemicals in the waste stream could leave the property and flow in many directions and into many draining basins, including the Allegheny Creek and ultimately the Delaware River. The hydrology studies used for this proposal were appropriately based on historic data. However, what seem to be more frequent and extreme rainfall amounts in recent years raises the potential that the design may not be sufficient. The site is not contiguous to the wastewater treatment plant, posing risk to non-RPL property owners where the treated effluent will move through. RPL has ample industrially zoned acreage that includes farm fields that could be used for its drip irrigation field. They, who have so much to gain from this project, should be the ones who bear the consequences of any problems that arise. With the township's drinking water at stake, our association urges you to do all that you can to ensure the health and safety of the residents and deny this special exception request. The board appreciates the opportunity to voice our concerns and respectfully asks that you give them serious consideration as you deliberate and make your decision. And before I go, I'd like to offer my personal comments as a lifelong resident of the township. I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics from ESU and retired 5 years ago from a career in banking and bank supervision. That's when I started spending time protecting the environment in Northampton and Monroe counties. I understand and appreciate the need to balance our area's environmental protection with development options that provide employment and increase our tax base. As both a bank lending officer and a national bank examiner, my work focused on assessing risk. My specialties were credit risk, mainly commercial real estate, and starting in 2004, operational risk. By definition, operational risk is the risk of loss resulting from inadequate or failed internal processes, people, and systems, or from external events. Basically, losses caused by things that go wrong that weren't expected. In my opinion, this overall project, and especially this proposed drip irrigation system, has high operational risk. RPL needs to do all that it can to bear and control that risk, rather than seek this special exception that spreads the risk into residential neighborhoods. It's up to our township officials, including you, to limit the risk posed by this project and protect our residents. Please take that step to do that by denying this special exception request. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Can I clarify, what, the first and last name again, it was Allison?
Heinzone, H-E-I-N-S-O-H-N.
H-E-I-N-S-O-H-N? Okay, and what was the name of the watershed?
Martin Jacoby Watershed
What's-
Association.
Can you spell Jacoby?
J-A.
Oh, Jacoby, okay, sorry.
Jacob with a Y.
Go ahead, Mark, sorry, that's all I have.
I don't think I got questioned as a public comment.
Yeah, and she's
You
correct.
made an awful lot of statements.
I mean,
I didn't testify as an expert, I testified as.
you made opinions
I
as
have
an
opinion.
expert, I think.
I did not
I mean,
say.
her entire statement was about opinions about the risks of the thing. I mean,
As opposed to Mr. Tripoli's testimony when he solicited solicited answers and questions to both the board and the applicant. This witness is just giving
The
opinions.
municipality planning code, section 908.
Sorry,
says
start
that-
again.
Section 908 of the municipality planning code says I have the right to cross-examine adverse witnesses. This is obviously an adverse witness. I do not have that many.
I mean,
This is not an adverse witness. In my opinion,
it was not an adverse witness?
This is public comment time.
All right.
I don't know, I'm a
Mark, I don't know
resident.
if you have relevant questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Were you here?
Speak into the mic, please.
It's Michael's Green.
Were you here for Mr. Ebert's testimony?
I was here for most of it, I don't know if I was here for all of it.
Were
I
you,
did miss a couple meetings.
were you here for Mr. Clark's testimony?
Was he the hydrologist or the
Mhm.
geologist?
I
I missed the hydrologist testimony.
Were you here for Mr. Valentine's testimony?
He was the geologist?
Soil scientist.
I don't believe I was, no.
And the people who issued this opinion that you read materials did they review in coming to the conclusions that they did?
Basically, it's common sense and logic.
I was gonna ask if she had an opportunity or knew that she had an opportunity to review the plans at the township, because apparently I was gonna ask literally every person that, because I think with how Mr. Tripoli, it appears that there was some, you know, that was not known that people could go in and review the plans and the exhibits.
I think that's not relevant at this point. People are getting up, this lady's gotten up, gave her opinion, gave the opinion of somebody else, and I have the right, and this board should be able to understand on what basis these opinions were made.
I disagree.
I mean, she showed up as a representative of this watershed association.
Right, and it's a public comment, and she's giving public comment on behalf of the board that is interesting. I don't think cross-examination applies to this. I mean, you can allow it, but I think it's objectionable and it's not.
Objectionable, you don't even represent, I mean, objectionable to what? I mean, here's my issue. She didn't just get up and say, hey, I'm concerned about X, Y, Z as an individual citizen. She got up here as a representative of a watershed association, and a lot of her statement suggested that it was an expert testimony on behalf of this watershed association.
Not true.
That's not true.
Not true according to who? I mean, I think if you went to court with that transcript of what she said, I think that would be considered an expert opinion.
And I believe that public opinion can give those kind of opinions.
Okay.
Wait,
All right, it's over. You don't
well,
have-
I want to hear the answer to my last question. Did you answer my last question?
Valentine, I think I said soil
No,
scientist.
Allison, just sit down.
Could you read back my last question?
I mean, I don't understand why, whatever. All right.
I asked a question about what her testimony, or what the testimony about the watershed was based upon. And I think she said, no, there were no.
I said logic and common sense was my answer.
There you go. Okay. Mr. Cole, you ready?
As a resident,
Well, you're a party? Okay.
I'm not a party.
Okay, so you don't want to be questioned? Are you going to provide expert testimony?
Question
I am going to testify, if you want to call it that, or comment. I was here before, and I heard all sorts of objections because I was biased. So I'm not as an expert witness, I'm here, as I'll explain to you.
To provide the same testimony that you would as an expert witness?
You don't know that.
I'll know shortly. Go ahead. I'll know
For
shortly.
the person with knowledge of this.
Okay.
Would you pass those out?
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Charles Cole, 6 Riverton Road. Many of you know me as Charlie. Tonight, I'd prefer to be called Dr. Charles Cole, Emeritus Professor of Engineering at Penn State University. I'm going to object to this. He wants to testify.
Listen. I have an issue with the 14-page report that he is going to do that. Listen. I asked everyone to be adults and limit public comment to something reasonable. If you think coming up here with a 14-page report, and you're gonna read a 14-page report,
Do you want to be educated to what the problems are?
you had an
in the state, or
opportunity,
don't
you were gonna be called as a witness.
He wouldn't let me.
Who
He
wouldn't
objected.
let you? He said that he was going to cross-examine you on all of those things, and there was a decision made
Objected. So
that-
I chose
to not call
not
him.
to speak as an expert.
Oh, it was Blazy. I mean,
I don't have a copy of this. What is it?
I don't know.
May I say who I am, at least? Well, you already did, and you don't understand. I understand you very well. Go ahead, explain how you understand me, or shouldn't we allow that? No, I've read all of the false statements that you made in newspapers and articles. You've defame this project for 4 years. I know exactly who you
Yeah,
are.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay, can you let him talk?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You all can ignore it if you don't believe me.
It has nothing to do with believing you, Mr. Cole. It has nothing to do with believing you. I have an issue with the process in which this happened. That's what I have an issue with. You were going to be called as a witness you were represented by an attorney here. Now you're showing up here to try to pose this as, well, I'm just here as to provide public comment, to try to prevent him from asking you any questions to clarify some of the things that you're trying to say as an expert. That's what I have an issue with. I have an issue with you trying to circumvent the legal process here. That's what I have a process with. Okay, that's my opinion of what's happening. Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to let you talk, but that's my opinion of what's happening. Go ahead.
Wait, this
Go ahead. No, Mark.
This is an expert report.
Mark.
I didn't get it in advance.
Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Emeritus Berg Professor of Environmental Engineering. I have a BS degree in Chemical Engineering. I have an MS and PhD in Environmental Sciences. Worked in an industry for nearly 10 years on wastewater treatment and chemical processes. Then I moved on to Penn State and I taught industrial waste courses, water treatment, wastewater, sustainable engineering, both undergraduate and graduate level. I have 60 publications in the field. I was a Fulbright scholar in Sweden working on water, and I was with the Association of Advancement of Science as a fellow with EPA in Washington. And lastly, I was in New Zealand helping to teach a course in sustainable engineering where I taught the industrial waste part of it. I've been an authority member, Water and Wastewater Authority for years, registered professional engineer, and I chaired the State Board of Certification of Sewage and Treatment Plant Operators, and I was an SEO certified for maybe 10 years. I'm a resident of Upper Mount Bethel now, and probably the last thing noteworthy here mentioning, I chaired the ad hoc well committee. Now, I did an analysis of looking at the zoning and also what I saw as the appropriateness of this drip irrigation facility on the Angle property. And it's sort of a sidebar to this. Last night at the Planning Commission meeting, with respect to the drip irrigation field on the Angle property, it was alluded that this was in a permit process with DEP. DEP has no such permit application, so don't be under the impression that this is in the permitting process. It isn't. Now, let me first take the special exception for the sewage disposal field. Be located on both properties. So it's both the R1 and the I-2, which gets pushed off to the side, the I-2 part of it. And the applicant seeks special exception for the 23 acre, but when you look at the zoning, it says, shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property where it is located. And then there's other wording in there. Shouldn't jeopardize public health, safety, welfare, and convenience, and it should be in presence of conforming uses located in the area. Quick web search says that residential property values related to the wastewater treatment plants quickly showed that living within 3/10 of a mile of a treatment facility.
I'm going to object to this.
I'm
going to object to this.
Anecdotal experience. I have 50 years of working with municipal
I've
wastewater plants.
I've objected
Will you
to
let
this.
me finish speaking?
No,
and
I'm
quiet this
objecting to your
person?
speech.
Objection is noted. Keep going, Joey.
Anecdotal experience.
Listen,
50 years.
I'm gonna put a time limit on it. I'm gonna put a time limit on it, Mr. Cole. Please get to the points that you wanna get to, please, because I'm
Okay.
going to put a time on it, and everyone is going to be put on a time limit from moving forward if this is how it's gonna go. Please do not get in fights with the, Mr. Captain, please do not let him get through this. It's noted your objections to, I assume you object to everything he's saying in the basis that would be, or on the basis that whatever would be considered expert testimony, I assume you're objecting to that.
Certainly that, but then now he's analyzing the zoning ordinance as a legal matter.
And a real estate expert. So I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Your objection's noted. If there's an issue with this and it comes up, your objection's noted if this is on appeal.
Okay, and let me just finish. A real estate appraiser estimated the property values would be reduced by 9%. So you take those three things and you find that this drip irrigation facility is going to have a negative impact on the neighboring properties. That's the first thing. It's not an appropriate use. Next thing. Zoning states that use must satisfy applicability and review of environmental impact requirements. There's been no such review to my knowledge. And I've spoken to the engineer about it, and there hasn't been. Performance impacts, the thing related now to quantity and quality of that effluent. If you have a wastewater effluent that can contribute to the pollution of the surface or underground waters, you've got a problem. Furthermore, it may not endanger the underground water level or supply or other properties consistent with applicable state and federal standards, or create other objectionable conditions. And to save some time and words here, I'll skip over. And if you look under environmentally sensitive areas, there are, right next to this, environmentally sensitive areas, and groundwater aquifers and recharge areas have special requirements for groundwater protection. Any proposed land use which may directly by means of effluent discharge into the ground or indirectly through leaching of stored materials, you have the old sludge site, shall be prohibited. Their engineer said that this was going to recharge groundwaters. So now you have a case where things may happen. And without knowing what chemicals might be in this wastewater, whether it be PFAS or recalcitrant chemicals that are passing through the system and ending up in the groundwater, you can have a problem. Doubling the amount of water applied on that 23-acre site increases the mounding effect. This is something as an SEO you understand. You keep putting water on, it keeps piling up, and it goes out the sides. This is going to push water into that shallow aquifer, and it will come out, some in the groundwater, some in springs, and if this comes down across Onufrac's property, for instance.
Whose property, I'm sorry?
Onufrac, Onufraks property. The soils are more moist. You can have molds, you can have mildews, you have spores from it, and this may possibly aggravate Regina Onufrac's chronic lung condition, cystic fibrosis. Gary Cribbs, I'll just say one sentence about that. He pointed out that many, if not all, surrounding domestic water supplies will be impacted. You heard that in expert testimony. So without knowing RPL's manufacturers, what they're using, there's no way of ensuring the effluent does not contain pass-through chemicals. They keep talking about MIPP, the Municipal Industrial Pretreatment Program. those only work as good as what you hope they might. Accidents happen, things get into the sewers, into drains, sanitary drains, and if they get through into this system, they pass through the SBR, out into the drip field, and once you've contaminated the groundwater, it's not like, say, contaminating a creek or the river. This is not forever, but it's an awful long time that you've screwed it up. They don't know what manufacturers are in this industrial park, so you can't really design systems to monitor the flow through. There are not real-time, online times devices to measure this. So
Objection.
you need to know what's in there before you
I'm gonna
can
give
set
you an
up.
opportunity to ask him questions and answer.
I don't want to ask him questions. He's giving expert testimony here. He was going to be called as an expert, and he would have had to answer specific questions, and I would have had his reports in advance, and I could have been prepared to cross-examine him. He chickened out. He did not testify. He clearly does.
Why didn't you want me to testify? Maybe because I do know what I'm
No,
saying.
because you're so biased. You're so biased when you sued us.
All right, stop. Is there anything else you want to say, Mr. Cole?
Yes, the attempt was made by Mr. Kaplan here to discredit what Dr. Elliott said because he did not, quotes, have experience with SBRs. He understood the application of wastewater onto land, whether it be spray irrigated or drip irrigated.
I'm going to object to this. He's going to now talk about what Dr. Elliott testified to.
And
I
the
mean, there are certain
conclusion,
limits
2 more
here.
minutes. 2 more minutes.
the conclusion is these requirements can't be met. Therefore, the drip field should not be allowed on the property in the R1 zone. Water is a resource in the common, meaning we all have a right to clean air and water. And quickly here, the special exception for the drip irrigation sewage disposal field is in the announcement for the hearing for the I-2, but it's just sort of passed off to the side. Nobody talks about it, so therefore, drip irrigation could be done on the I-2, and the applicant appeals the determination of the zoning officer sitting there with you that said that there's much evidence to say that the disposal may be part of the wastewater treatment system. And for us working, I was certified as an SEO, I worked with sanitary systems, I worked with land
The
applications.
man's just lying. We did not appeal. We withdrew whatever appeal we had to a determination that is completely different than what he's saying.
I'm looking
Noted.
at it right
Noted. Go
here.
ahead.
You can read what
Yeah,
I'm
one more minute.
referring to. And if you look at the field manual for Pennsylvania SEOs, US EPA brochure, and let's see, Penn State's living filter discussion, and from my personal experience, you most always take into account the disposal site as part of the whole treatment system. And I don't know what they're saying, but it's part of what I read that this hearing is about. It is the applicant appeals the following determination of the zoning officer that disposal fields are part of sewage treatment facilities. And that probably means you have a 500-foot setback from those as well. So I have other material, I gave it to you.
And are you asking that this be admitted as an exhibit? As a party?
I'm not a party.
You're
As
represented
a
by Mr.
resident-
Blasey. You're represented by Mr. Blasey.
No, he's
I'm not.
There's only 3 of us.
He doesn't represent
And you
me.
didn't request party status from the beginning, because I'll go back to the first record. Okay. all
You're
right,
welcome
all right,
to.
all right.
I sat here and listened.
I object to it.
Well, thank you.
Do you have any,
It must really be good.
I mean, it's an expert report, I don't,
It is what it is. Look, I think there was no, he was not.
wait, hang on, Mr. Kohler, you're represented by Mr. Spadoni, aren't you?
Beg your
Are you
pardon?
represented by Mr. Spadoni?
No.
Okay.
He
Okay.
sends copies of his letters to you.
Okay.
He sends copies of his letters to you, doesn't he?
I get a newspaper copy.
That's a great answer. Great answer.
This isn't a transcript. This is an expert report.
Good, it's a report.
It's an expert report. This goes, listen, you can appeal it if you want, but this is an expert report that clearly was not presented to anyone in advance before tonight.
No, let it go. Public comment should be in the record.
Okay, it's not an exhibit. It's not an exhibit.
And your reason is because your opinion is it's an expert report?
Adrian,
I'm
it's an
asking for
expert
your
report
reasoning.
that has not been provided in advance, and it's trying to be admitted as an expert report.
There's
There are
a more-
citations,
I just
there's
want
a
to know what your
CV.
reason for excluding it.
I mean,
Well, there's a more
Do
fundamental.
you have an objection to, do you have any comment to it, or to the objection?
Listen, to the extent that he is testifying as a resident, I believe he can testify as, and look, there have been plenty of people. who
Listen,
come-
listen.
Let me finish.
I got it, go
Let me
ahead.
finish. There are plenty of people that come to zoning hearing boards that will cite to different things that maybe they have qualifications for, maybe they don't. You can give with it to it what weight their qualifications are. And clearly, Mr. Cole's not been vetted or presented as an expert. If your opinion is this should not be introduced, that's your opinion.
It was public comment. He said everything that's in this report.
Chad, there's a more fundamental issue than that. He testified. His testimony is his testimony.
It's public comment. Whatever, it is on the record. So whatever it is at this time.
That's right.
All right. Who's next? Mr. Clark, you'll be next, yeah.
Howard Klein, K-L-E-I-N.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Mr. Klein, just address them.
801 Riverton Road, Bangor, PA.
Mr. Klein, refresh my memory, did you request party status?
No.
Okay.
Last night at the Planning Commission meeting, Frank Klein, longtime Planning Commission member, asked Bob Lewis, who was representing RPL, some very insightful and probing questions. First question he asked was, he asked if RPL had looked into any additional sites for the drip irrigation field. Mr. Lewis's response was RPL didn't have to. Second question Mr. Klein asked was, by the way, he's no relation to me. It's spelled the same way, but no relation. Mr. Klein asked about the PFAS, the forever chemicals, and Mr. Lewis's response was that RPL didn't have to. They didn't have to look into it. Now, at the meeting last night, just to validate what I'm saying, and please do if there's any discrepancy.
This is all hearsay.
No, it's not. Public comment.
Okay. Listen.
Mr. Horn was there at the meeting, Mr. McDonald was at the meeting, and I believe Mr. Manzi was at the meeting. So if there's any discrepancy with what I said, please say it, because I think it's accurate. I'd like to hand out some articles, a article actually.
I mean, this is so petty. I just, it's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame.
whether it be industrial, effluent, the proposed sewage disposal fields, this is the end product of a sewage wastewater treatment plant. That's what it is. And this is what you would be allowing on the drip irrigation fields. Notice the title of the article.
I'm going to object to the article. The article is hearsay. The Commonwealth Court has said you can't introduce this kind of stuff because I can't cross-examine whatever is being said there.
It's from the New York Times.
It doesn't matter.
Something's poisoning America's land.
Objection.
Farmers fear forever chemicals. That's not me
You
talking.
can certainly comment on it, whether it can be admitted as an exhibit. I
So-
will say that it is questionable, but he can certainly make a comment on
Thank
this
you.
article.
Well, I'm done.
Go ahead,
I'm done,
I'm not
but
saying.
one thing I would say, because I know a little bit about this stuff, is get your water tested. Get it tested for those chemicals, because it's in the soil, it's in the water, it's in the waste, and it's a carcinogen. You get your water tested too. Read the article.
Next, you need to swear me in.
Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. I can do this in 6 minutes if you let me roll. Do what you need to do.
You might. All right. Good evening, Fred Clark, Crystal Terrace, Mount
Sorry, Fred,
Bethel.
who?
Fred Clark, C-L-A-R-K. First, I'd like to thank Lisa Pector for providing me with a binder of information on the project that was helpful in my evaluation of the proposed plan. The transparency was appreciated and a lot of work has been done. In most of my public comments on the proposed RPL project, I focused on 2 points. One, the ownership of the RPL properties gives the developer certain property rights, and I support those rights to build within the confines of the law. And 2, the use of the Angle Field for the disposal of industrial wastewater in a residential neighborhood is inappropriate. When I purchased my property in a residential neighborhood of Upper Mount Bethel, it was with the understanding there was a zoning hearing board in place that valued and protected the property rights of all property owners. When there is an issue between landowners regarding competing property use rights, this zoning board is compelled to look at the zoning ordinance of the town and come to a decision on whose claim is on the right side of the law. While I'm willing to consider the property rights of the developer, I've seen very little evidence that my property rights have been considered in the RPL development process. I ask that this board give as much weight to my property rights as they afford the developer, no more or less. Having reviewed the binder provided to me, as well as the information available on the PADEP website, I have reason to believe that the industrial zone property could have and should have been used to dispose of the treated effluent. Special exception should only be permitted when there are no reasonable alternatives, and this proposed use fails that test. To qualify for use class 13, this board can only permit the proposed use if it determines that the use shall be appropriate to the proposed principal use of the property and/or to the presence of other conforming uses located in the area and the general area which the use will serve. No other properties in the area serve as drip irrigation fields for effluent from an industrial park, and hence the proposed use does not conform to the area where it's being proposed. Testimony has been presented that the proposed use will harm property values. From the year 2004 zoning ordinance, a special exception use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property where it is to be located. This use fails that test. From Title 25, Chapter 23, 25 PA Code 73.1, definitions. Industrial waste, a liquid, gaseous, radioactive, solid, or other substance which is not sewage, resulting from a manufacturing or industry or other plant or works and mine drainage, silt, coal mines, rock, debris, dirt and clay from coal mines, coal collieries, breakers, or other coal processing operations. This term includes substances, whether or not generally characterized as waste. By this definition, if any of the output from the industrial processes are mixed with the sewage from the sanitary systems of the RPL buildings, the treated effluent from the SBR will contain industrial waste. Referring to it as treated effluent does not change the fact that it is by definition partially industrial waste. From reviewing the information provided by the applicant, I am willing to concede that if there are no failures in the systems as proposed, the proposed use may not threaten public health any more than the failure of a typical on-lot system or farming activities would. I would suggest that you talk to someone at the Portland Authority about the chances that there will never be a failure. As a retired professional with decades of experience in industrial settings, I was responsible for the control and protection systems of nuclear and coal power plants as well as electric transmission and distribution systems. In addition, I was trained in and performed failure modes and effects analysis, probability risk assessment, and root cause analysis. I find the information provided to this board to decide on whether the safety of the public will be protected to be lacking. First, the monitoring of outputs of the building and the field were only going to be sufficient to meet standards. If this was in your neighborhood, you might want them to exceed standards. The reliability of system components and probability of a failure of a system were not quantified. Risk from failure is undefined, and the actions to be taken in case of a failure barely discussed. To be fair, it is difficult to impossible to quantify some of these things without detailed design, but information could have been presented on industry expectations / history in these areas. Right now, this board has no idea what can fail and what the risk to public health is. In the absence of this information, I suggest you push for clarity on these issues before deciding if a special exception should be permitted. Finally, I take no solace in being told that if an RPL tenant violates an EPA mandate or if the municipal authority fails in some way, there will be legal consequences for them. It reminds me of a comment by a coworker that they were glad my employer put up a camera outside our office so they could get a picture of the person that killed them. If this board approves this, it is my hope that they require the applicant to exceed minimum design, construction, and monitoring requirements set by the EPA and DEP. Thank you for your time.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Campbell?
No, I do not.
Mr. Cousins?
No.
Yeah, Kevin.
Chairman, I'm just gonna move this forward because I gotta be up that way, so we'll put this over here.
Do you want maybe if you turn that chair around, maybe you can leave it.
Richard, I'll hold it.
Just hold this one. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Richard Wilfred Hunt, I live on Shady Lane here in Upper Mount Bethel Township. So, good evening, and thank you for your time. It's my understanding tonight that this board may have been voting on whether or not to allow RPL Logistics LLC to build a drip irrigation field, which is not a permitted use in our R1 zone. But because all the attorneys are not present tonight to argue the case, it hopefully allows you more time to closely look at what's at stake here. The Municipal Planning Code of PA sets forth the criteria that must be met for the zoning hearing board to grant a variance. And in this case, it's a special exception use, which is a type of variance. According to the Municipal Planning Code Planning Guide, the zoning hearing board may grant a variance provided that all the following findings are
I'm
made.
going to object.
This is just
We're not-
summarized.
I'm going to object. You're not
It's not a
asking
variance.
for a variance.
It's not a.
No, this is a special exception use, which is a type of variance.
No, it's
It's
not.
not.
No, it's not.
So anyway,
I mean,
so
do we just wanna, I mean, are
I
you
will-
okay with just people getting up here and saying?
So here's what,
Okay.
okay, so
all right.
I,
Go ahead.
Solicitor, I will bypass that if that's being questioned like that, but a special exception use, according to the planning guide by the municipal planning code, says it's a type of variance.
Okay.
All right,
What
so
section was that?
it's in the municipal planning code planning guide,
Section-
Pennsylvania.
Section what?
I don't know what section that is.
Okay.
So, under the planning code, the
The
planning
planning code's
guide.
pretty
you see it.
long, so if you had a section that specifically said that, because that would be
Under
the first time
zoning-
I've ever heard
Under
that a
zoning,
special exception is a variance. It's the first time I've ever heard that in my entire life, so.
it's in the
okay.
planning code. So
But
take
you
a
don't
look.
know the section?
No,
Okay.
look under zoning hearing board under,
Okay.
that's how I.
I mean, you're the one saying it, so that's
That's
why
the
I'm
first
asking.
thing that came up when I Googled
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Google's those.
So I'll bypass that if you have the objection. So I put this, up here, I think everybody's seen this, but I want to just clarify some things. So this is, for orientation, this is the Delaware River right here.
Can we
Up
just
here-
identify what this map is, just so that it's on the record, so that we know what it
Sure,
is?
this is RPL's, early submission for their industrial park.
Can we confirm that this is the plan
This is
that's been?
SK1. It has not been modified at all. Those are
What's the
just
date on it?
stickers over holes.
Is that the one that's been submitted?
No, they modified this plan.
Right, they've modified it by, grouping three of the buildings to a conditional use of 1.5 million. So I'm not sure which those buildings are.
Wait, no. You're saying they modified the plan?
They modified the plan.
It has nothing to
Excuse
do,
me.
it has nothing,
Look,
no.
just
Listen.
This has nothing to do with the modification. This is a general picture of what's going
I'm
on.
just, the clarification needs to be made for the record, that if
Thank
you
you.
modified this plan,
I did not modify this plan.
you did not, what are you
Sure you
saying?
did. What are those two pink plots over on the right?
Those are over holes, so I wouldn't have to show this.
What?
They're over holes in my map, which has been here for many, many times.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify, if you changed anything on this, I wanted it to be known.
No, well,
I'm not
other
saying
than
it's
these,
good. I
other
just
than
wanted to be
these
clear.
two things, which are just patches over stuff.
Okay.
Pull them off and you'll see the hole.
Okay.
No. That's my only drawing.
Why couldn't he use the document that's in the record?
I don't know. Go ahead.
So,
Just go ahead.
so all I'm trying to show is the orientation of the industrial park. The I-2 zone is not to change. This is the Delaware River. This is North Delaware Drive 611. This is our community park right here. Down here is the edge of the angle field. Potomac comes down here and it dives down this way. Here is the proposed wastewater treatment plant. So if you look at this map, you also see proposed sites of two smaller drip irrigation fields. And these have been alluded to before. They are right here, but they happen to be in the I-2 zone. So I think the I-2 zone, through the text amendment, allows it as a permitted use. No need to go through our zoning hearing board for anything. Is that correct, Mr. Kaplan? These sites and others,
What he said is wrong. The other fields are in a residential district.
they're in the I-2 zone, are they not?
Now,
I mean, the zoning officer's saying they're not, so you can disagree with her if you want.
Then I stand corrected.
All right. So now we have that.
I do want to show where the I-2 zone comes down. It comes down and it picks up those fields and it comes all the way down to the river. The point I'm trying to make is that through expert testimony on their side, through, I guess, Valentine and Clark, that they tested in other parts of the I-2 zone looking for suitable soils for drip fields. So again, why does RPL need the angle field when they have plenty of options elsewhere? And then from the zoning ordinance, a special exception, thank you, Charlie, that's good. Yep. A special exception use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property where it's to be located.
there is demonstrated damage to the value of adjacent properties in the form of lower selling costs and longer time on the market for homes around the proposed drip field. Furthermore, our zoning officer, in addition to determining that an off-site disposal field is not a listed permitted use or a special exception use in the R1 zoning district, it's also not an appropriate public use or essential service. So,
Objection.
the proposed-
More nonsense.
the
Making
propo-
it up as he goes along.
the proposed off-site disposal field on the Angle Field,
Can you start that last sentence again?
yeah, the proposed off-site disposal field on the Angle Field is a private facility, not a public facility. The municipal authority formed by and for the developer has been dissolved by the township, and with it, the sewer and water agreement. I'm pretty sure all of your families have lived here in Upper Mount Bethel for 50 years or more. I'd be safe in saying 100 years or more, as my family has. And you call this area your home because of the quiet, the proximity to the Delaware, the flora, the fauna, etc. RPL's vision for their industrial park, over 8 million square foot of industrial warehousing, does not include any of this. And then finally, please do not grant RPL a variance or special exception use in our R1 zoning. If you do, you're setting a legal precedent. Please vote no to the repeal. Please support the determinations by your zoning officer, and please protect our township. Thank you.
Are you a party opponent? You're not? Okay.
I am a resident, 34 years.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Mark Metzger, 114 City Court. And I'm one of those people who's been here for every session. I've listened to the testimony of every expert witness. And I'm here to add some things to the record that I don't think you've heard yet. I have expertise in this area. I have a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of New York at Fredonia. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering science from the State University of New York at Buffalo. I have a master's degree in material science and polymer processing from Rutgers University. And I have a master's degree from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. For the last 42 years, I've worked for the federal government as an expert in processing the energetic materials for the Army. And energetic materials, for those who may not be familiar, are explosive propellants and any other hazardous and or reactive materials. So I don't want to say that I'm expert, but I am familiar with some of these things. But I'm not here to talk about any of that. I want to talk about something else, because when you start this story at a different point in time, and I realize the complications that all of the technical aspects of this thing bring to it, it becomes very difficult to understand what's happening. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. So for me, this story starts on October the 13th, 2020, where it was filed at the Northampton County Court, an easement for a settlement to a sludge case. And in that settlement, it says, this prohibition specifically accepts the land application of treated effluent from a Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, permitted wastewater treatment plant or stormwater in the Potomac Farm, blah, 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 blah. Okay? The owner of that property is the property under consideration now. That was Ron Engel at the time. At that time, Ron Engel was also the zoning hearing board chairman. On December the 8th, 2021, Captain Stewart writes a letter to the Keller Zoning Company and Inspection Service, and they made 3 requests, okay? The one that I want to point out from this guy, and I got way too much material here to cover in a decent, so
Sounds
when
like
you've
it,
had
yeah.
enough, just yell uncle. But I tried to do is get a compendium and a chronology of the facts to, so that.
I guess my only question is that are the things that you're referring to that occurred and that were requested in 2021, what is being requested now? Because the board, it's irrelevant if it's not what's being requested now.
It's all relevant, and the question is, in case I don't get to the bottom line, I want to put the bottom line up right now. and it's been kind of touched on. But with the advent of the authority and everything else, and with the agreement, as of today, September the 19th, 2024, there is no public sewage capability being offered to the community. That's the bottom line, and everything else leads up to that point. Therefore, it's not an it is accurate. It's not an exception, it's a conditional use. Conditional use is not under the purview of this board, it's actually the Board of Supervisors. Yet, here we are. So, let me go through, okay? So, on, December the 8th, 2021, Captain Stewart writes a letter to the Zoning Hearing Board. Basically, the issue that I want to say is exactly the one that's been brought out, concerning the exceptional use and essential services of that facility. Keller Zoning sends a letter back to Captain Stewart, and the letter states that it is not an appropriate public use or essential service listed as a special exception under the use in the R1 zone. The zoning ordinance defines essential services as the erection, construction, alteration, or maintenance by public facilities or municipal or other governmental agencies. Okay. At that point in time, there was no authority. No one had talked about an authority. It's still something that is yet to exist. It doesn't exist. And March the 8th, 2022, deed of sale was registered with the county for the R1, the Angle Field in the R1 zone.
Sorry, what field?
The Angle Field. It's the subject property for the applicant. Okay, on March the 8th, I'm sorry, I just did that one. Okay, the next letter we get comes from Keller Zoning again, and it's on November the 4th of 2022, and the applicant then, this is applicant's Exhibit 2. The letter states the subdivision originally proposed as a private sewage treatment center system with a disposal field located in the R1 zoning district. Okay, the current proposal is for a public sewage treatment plant located in the I2 district with an effluent field located in the R1 zone. Well, what makes this public? It makes it public because, if it's owned by a public utility or organization, or it's providing service to the public organization. Well, as it stands right now, it's still owned by RPL on private property. It's still being built and developed by RPL. And the town wants to dissolve the municipal authority, so there's no public aspect to this at all. Therefore, it doesn't fit under this venue. And you said you don't want to circumvent legal issues. Well, there's the big one. That's the elephant in the room. Okay. Now, the other things I put together is at the beginning of this. Here. I suggest that everybody on this board take this table, which comes out of the UMBT zoning ordinance, and look at this very carefully. And you read the definitions very carefully. There's no unequivocal terms listed here. There's no real wiggle room for interpretation. This is not a public system. It's a private system. So what are the residents' concerns? And I think you've heard most of them, okay? But no official agency has rendered opinion on RPL's waste disposal plan. We haven't heard from DEP, we haven't heard from the state, we haven't heard from anybody, okay? Well, who's supposed to call those people? If it's an exceptional use, okay, it should have been the Board of Supervisors calling in to elucidate and clarify a lot of these issues from a regulatory level. Okay, the experts that the objectors have brought in have objected to the methodologies and the results of the applicant's data that was presented. And there's a report that shows that the drip field is already negatively influencing properties. That's already been mentioned. And there's no data to show that the industrial waste effluent will not get into the major aquifer. For the Army, I have had the opportunity to design an industrial waste system for Lake City Army Ammunition Plant, which was a 3-year, $22.5 million program, which constituted 10 waste streams that had to be dealt with. It was a system very similar to what Fred Eber was trying to talk to you about with that MPPI. It's going to detect waste based on sensors, transducer conditioners, programmable controllers and some sort of human-computer interface. And I gotta tell you, it didn't work. We ultimately had to go back and use laboratory test results to make it work. Because their sensors, they work pretty good with metals. They don't work very well at all for polymers and plastics and things that are non-metallic. And you can't always detect when these things are getting through the system. That's why those systems are fraught with errors. Well, how many errors could we expect? So I went to the PADEP website, and this is a site, I'll leave this with you if anybody's interested. And the source is down at the bottom. How many violations per county we're talking about? These are NPDES violations recorded by PADEP. And if you want all the raw data, I have that, I can supply it.
Objection, the NPDES can be multiple.
And it is, and let's just go for the number.
So then I'm going to object to it, it's not relevant.
No, it is relevant because you can do an analysis and you can tell that
Are they all
roughly.
drip irrigation fields?
What's that?
Are they all drip irrigation fields?
Not necessarily
Then why would
drip
it be relevant to something other than drip
It
irrigation?
just goes to show you that these systems that this engineer's concept is built upon fail. And you can't always tell, okay? 343 incidents. Now, these are all PADEP and PDS violations, okay? And some of these are in counties where Mr. Ebert did his work. All I'm saying is his expert testimony was his opinion, okay? And it's one engineer's opinion. It's theoretical, because he doesn't know what materials are going in. He doesn't know what processes he's dealing with. He can't design it.
Under the applicant's proposal, who would be in control of what goes into the system?
According to that Fred Ebert's plan, the municipal authority and/or the regulatory agents would be in control of that. Now, if there's no municipal authority, then who is it?
Township?
Perhaps.
What do you mean perhaps?
Perhaps.
They're the ones that took over all of the business from the municipal authority.
That's yet to be decided by the
I will
board.
object to that because that is because the agreements that the municipal authority have entered into since being dissolved are at issue.
That's a different issue. All I said was that the township assumed all of the authority, all of.
But they haven't done anything yet.
Well, then there you go. That doesn't mean that I'm wrong when I said that the township assumed everything, because I heard Mr. Friedman's resolution to that effect. I believe the resolution may have even been entered as an exhibit in this case.
So, either the
I think
zoning.
what you're saying is something different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let me just cut to the chase. I'm also involved in a program, and I'm still working as a consultant, trying to reconstitute mining operations in the country. Now, what that has to do with here is they're going through a NEPA process, and they're going to go through a record of decision. In the decision of that record of decision, they're going to do a balance of harms.
A what?
A balance of harms. Okay?
What's the NEPA process?
NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Act.
I'm going to object. NEPA is not applicable here. There's no federal
I'm not
money
saying that
involved.
I'm not saying that it is. I'm trying to
It's
tell,
irrelevant.
maybe to you. In your deliberations, what you want to do is look at the balance of harms on each side. If we grant the approval, what gets harmed? If we don't grant the approval, what gets harmed? Mr. Kaplan and RPL have presented a case to show that they could put a drip field in the R1 zone. They haven't presented anything to the effect of what would the harm be to their project and or to the operation that they have there if they do not. We have talked about the harm that would be brought to the area should industrial effluents pollute the environment there. There's harm to there. So it's a balance of harms. Those are the things you want to look at. Those are the things you want to deliberate over. And I'd hope you'd vote in terms of the balance of harms to be had. And I'll end it there.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Emily Tramontano, I live off of Bramblewood Drive, Bangor, Pennsylvania.
Sorry, can you spell your last name?
Tramontano.
And the road again, or?
Bramblewood.
Can you pull the mic closer?
Sure can. Hello, so I just learned about this project today. I am a conservation practitioner by trade. I am very unaware of the project, of who is in this room, or even the board itself. So I was wondering if this is a good opportunity to ask a couple questions that have stuck out from previous testimonies. Starting with Charlie. There's Charles in the room. That mentions
Objection, this is comment, this is letting comment. It's not calling witnesses.
No, it was just a question. Is
This
it
comment
safe
period.
to assume that there was no environmental impact assessment done yet for this project?
Who are you asking?
Anybody in this room?
No, you can't just ask anybody in the room.
You just learned about it today. We've had 9 hearings. We've had 3 witnesses on our side, and 3 or 4 on their side. Their expert witness said that this system is a safe system as long as we comply with the EP requirements. And that's what it's all about.
Who's testifying now?
There were 10 hearings so far, and this is the first time a long-term resident has heard about this project. You also employed someone else, I think it was the first person to testify here or have their comment, to get more information specifically from a municipal building, which is not always accessible to all residents in the area. So as someone who is just seeking accessibility towards the information on this project, I did hear that a previous statement did conclude that there has been no environmental impact assessment done for this project so far.
I don't know.
I couldn't hear her. What did you say?
Hard to hear you, it's hard to hear you. Speak fast.
There has been no environmental
Impact assessment done for this project so far.
Got it. Okay.
Has, I just did not hear either side validate that
Validate.
You mean tonight?
tonight, that there has been no environmental
We're
impact.
not on
statement.
testimony now.
We found none.
Wait.
There's none?
So this, Mr. Cole, you had your opportunity.
I'm answering your
No,
question.
you're not a witness. Remember that? Remember you told me, you
This
got
is
up
a
here and you
public
argued with me
hearing?
that you're not a witness? You're not a witness.
There are binders and binders and binders of documents prepared by a sewer engineer, a soil scientist, and a hydrogeologist, all of which analyzed the impact, told us how to design this. It's all in the record. And then,
Environmental study.
they are environmental studies.
There was no environmental.
Could we do closings next
Look,
time, please?
This doesn't work. She doesn't belong up here to start asking
Hey,
questions.
who are you to say who goes up there and who doesn't? This is public comment, for God's sake.
Well, it's not comment, it's questions.
Oh, does the little girl scare you, Mark?
I guess my last comment and non-question will be, so this process, has it have touched anyone's ears from natural heritage? I know it has not been addressed since the EPA has not responded to any project since. That was another comment made by Charlie. The EPA has not resulted in any sort of correspondence. Now that has natural heritage, who does have jurisdiction over wetlands in Pennsylvania.
Is that a statement?
Yes, this is a statement. The map that somebody, beautiful map, I also make maps for a living. Beautiful map that somebody brought up. I was actually doing a wetland delineation study of the Mount Bethel area, just for funsies, not part of my formal career.
There have been multiple wetland studies and approvals by DEP, but that's over the 800, that's over the I-2 or I-1 and I-2 properties. There's no wetlands involved in what we're doing.
And is that for all
Yes, there
parcels?
are.
Because the map that was brought up, there are wetlands in the area. So is this information, I guess, available to everybody in this room?
Sure.
And where can I find that?
The township bill.
Okay, that ends my commentary. Thank you. I'm very thankful that there is not a lawyer present, I guess, from what I gathered, that there will be another hearing. I will look into this and you'll see me again, but thank you.
We're gonna take 5 minutes for bathroom break.
Is this on? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay. All right. Do I really have to do this for public comment? This is crazy, but I will.
You swear to tell the truth? the
I
whole truth,
certainly
and
do
nothing
swear
but
to tell the
so help you
truth.
God?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Which brings me to this. This is freaking public comment.
Name and address, please.
Judith Henkel, 1752 Robin Hood Road, Henkel.
Number again of the drive?
Henkel, 1752 Robin Hood Road. And yeah, I'm upset. I had 12-point print, it would have been one page, and I'm pretty much throwing it out because I was going to say that we have so many competent commentators that have spent hours and hours researching all our views. Nobody came up here and just blew off the top of their head anything they wanted to talk about. They've been looking at this, all these different meetings, most of them went to all of them, looking at it, making sure everything they said was as honest and official as it could be, because they all just swore to be honest, right? So I'm just perplexed in how we've gotten to this whole area of being rude with each other. When I hear we're biased, isn't that the whole point of this? We don't each have the same idea of what's going on here. Some of us who are bringing our displeasure with how this is going on and have looked up into it and seen all things. Yes, we have a lawyer. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. But I just want to say, I'm going to go back over because you didn't want duplication. And my bachelor's and master's in biology and wildlife pales in comparison to the people you've heard tonight with outstanding resumes and years of work experience. And all they're trying to do is say, here's what I've seen out there in the world, and I think maybe you ought to pay a little bit of attention to make sure that if you're not going to, and I think I asked at the end, deny the special exception, but you certainly can make some conditions on it. So in some of the things I have written down here, I'm going to just not talk about, but my overview of a lot of it has been said. And one of the things was I had gotten down to the point of going back to the text amendment approval in October of 2020, and then the township manager in the summer of 2021. We all now go back and see that River Point project had been well prepared at that time. They already were talking about going under Potomac Road onto the Angle property. And so everything has to be quiet because it's a business deal. You can't talk about that. So what I have down here was, there's been a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes here that did not conform in timelines or were disputed. How many times have we heard, oh, we applied for that, or DEP said, okay, whatever. Yes, believe it if you want. So things were pushed through and appeared to have compliance, the same with what's been discussed with the municipal authority with such an instance. I'm looking at, and I would like for someone to check on the zoning for the, what you call the Potomac property. Cornfields, just like Mr. Angles, they're across the road, but they're on the same side of the road and just downslope from where the sewage treatment facility would be. And I'm not sure if that's not an R1 district. From Marshfield Drive up through along Potomac, there's a small slice of property that used to be listed R1. So I'd like that to be checked on. Because what I had here was, testimony has only been about the Angle property. Testimony meaning all that information. And so not much was mentioned, although to mention there's another piece of property up there, you know, near the top of Potomac. If approval is given, the way I read that notice for the meeting tonight, if there is approval given for the Angle property and it becomes too difficult or expensive to comply with the DEP, the Army Corps of Engineer jurisdictional reviews and other reviews and comments, will the Potomac property become by default the primary drip field without any further inquiry to its suitability? As part of the 1,000-acre I-2 and I-3 former electric company property, couldn't just one building be spared for drip field within the industrial zone? I know people have talked about that before. Another zoning hearing board decision is whether the drip field is part of the sewage treatment facility. I mean, how could it not be? What use would all of those tubes or pipes or whatever under the ground be if you weren't discharging water from a facility? I mean, that seems like a no-brainer. And so to sum up, I have one instance of the discrepancy on the Anglo property is that the two hydrologists, I mean, yeah, they act as if everything they said is the gospel truth. We had people that came in as expert witnesses, and our hydrologist in particular interpreted the data differently, and he explained it here to everybody. So he differed on the impact of the water resource to the area and on its residents and downstream through the Allegheny Creek on the way to the river. There's also been reports on the loss of property value and the greater turnover in home sales in our area. And anybody who lives around here knows how many people have left or said, I wish I never bought. So I would guess that you're all about as exhausted as the rest of us. So I have one last question to ask, other than ask you to deny the special exception or allow for conditions. My last question is to all of you. Would you purchase and live in Mike and Regina Onufrak's house? Thank you.
You're gonna let me speak? I'll be brief.
I mean, like, this concept that you can switch between party and public comment, like, I don't.
He objects, because he objected when I was called to testify, and you upheld his objection, so I never got to testify.
You did testify.
No, I did not.
So you're
Go back and look at the records.
All right. Get yourself under oath, and I want you to say that you never testified before in this case. I mean, this is.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Michael Onufrak. That's Onufrak. I live at 43 Summerfield Drive in Mount Bethel. A couple of things. Back in January of 2023, I got this letter from Tina, and it was the notice of the next meeting for January 24 of 2023 on the appeal of Tina's decision that this is not an appropriate use for the R1 zone. That's what her report said. I have her report. If you guys haven't read it in a while, you really should read it, because it's pretty clear that her reasoning is totally right, makes sense. It's not appropriate for that R1 zone. Now, I am prejudiced because I don't want that there. And Charlie is prejudiced. Yeah, he doesn't want it there either. The three witnesses that we put on, they're prejudiced because we paid them to do a job, the same way that Mr. Kaplan paid his three witnesses. But let me talk about his three witnesses. Mr. Ebert testified that he can design and build a terrific sewage treatment system. Okay. He's an expert. I'm not. I have no idea. However, he got asked a direct question, which we gave our attorney to ask, which was, can you guarantee that there will never be an incident? And he said, no, I cannot guarantee that. To him, it's an incident. To me, it's a possible environmental disaster that's going to impact my drinking water and my family's health. Two, their expert talked about how great the soil was. I don't know how great it is. Their third expert talked about water flow. Our geohydrologist, who came to my property, and we walked to the back of my property to where my property ends and the farm begins. And he noted to me, and this is hearsay because he's not here to respond, but this is where the overflow from the farm comes through your property. So I asked him, well, if I'm getting an overflow now with just heavy rain, what happens when they put 100,000 gallons of treated wastewater onto that or into that field every single day? We don't know if it's 5 days a week or 7 days a week. But add 500,000 minimum gallons a week on that field. And their witness testified, got asked, where's the overflow going? And he said, into the wetlands and the stream. What's on the back of Mike Onufrak's property that's adjacent to that farm? Wetlands, which we talked about, because he asked me if I knew the wetlands was there when I bought the property. was the end of my testimony. And the stream runs from the farm, from Angus Farm, through the side of my property. There's a drain, because I have a shared driveway. It goes through the drain, underneath the driveway, out the other side, and it ends up in a tributary of, I think, to Delaware. When they sludged that property, and we fought it, and we ended up
I'm going to object to this sludge business again.
Why?
When I
It's
hear
relevant.
sludge,
It's relevant. When they did it, they put all kinds of chemicals, some known, some unknown, in that sludge. And that was put on that field, I don't know, 7, 8 times. So for them to say, putting 500,000 extra gallons of water on that farm is not going to allow that, whatever's there, to leach down into the aquifer and or my well, that's not scientifically sound, their argument. The only other thing I'm going to ask you, Tina said this is not appropriate. If you give them the special exception, you're pretty much saying that she's wrong. I hope that none of you have already made a decision, because I think some of you might have already. Please, whatever you think now, look at the testimony. I would ask you, his 3 witnesses, and everything Mr. Kaplan said, did they ever explain to the board why they deserve a special exception? And I submit to you, they've never even addressed that issue. They can design a great system, the soil is great, the water's going to flow, but they've never said how this benefits the town of Mount Bethel. It doesn't. It benefits RPL. And they talk about a municipal authority which may or may not exist. And I would say to you, if the municipal authority doesn't have to dissolve, they can always come back. If you deny them the special exception, the municipal authority can always come back to this board and present their case why now the authority should get a special exception. It's going to somehow benefit the town and not just RPL. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Pauline Clark, 19 Crystal Terrace. I share a lot of, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Pauline Clark?
Yes. I share a lot of the same concerns with what people have said up here already, so.
We can't hear, can you speak up?
Yeah, there's something about the mic tonight. I have to get closer to it. I share a lot of the concerns with what people have already said, so I am going to skip a lot of this. I might point out that who I agree with. Fortunately, one of them is my husband, Fred Clark. He talked about our proximity to the drip field and how we would be affected by it, so I'm going to skip that. We talked about Gary Cribbs and how he identified that the surrounding wells and the water is a recharge area for the aquifer, so I'm not going to get into that. We talked about home values, how they've been affected, so I won't repeat that. A lot of what Mark had said about the plans for the park and how it has grown, and that it was a choice, not a necessity, that RPL choose a residential field instead of something on their own property. That, by the way, was identified in the 2018 537 draft plan. They mentioned that they did what was asked, what was recommended with the sequential batch reactor, but in the paragraph right after that, it talked about the perfect area in the I2 zone that could have been used for a drip field. So it's not really an essential use thing. Richard also talked about the health and wellness, the health and welfare and the house values. So my house is in the affected radius of the wastewater treatment plant in the drip field that could be harmed not only by the stigma of wastewater treatment plants, which is notorious for having very bad odors and health
Sorry,
concerns,
Notorious for having,
very bad odors and health concerns, and the associated drip field. But we could also be affected by any accidents throughout the life of the system, which the question has been asked, what is the life of the system? And I'm not sure what the answer is. I've been here for every hearing. I was there for Mr. Ebert's presentation initially, but I don't remember the answer to what the life of the drip field actually is. And I don't really need an answer because I don't want to get him started, so. So Mr. Ebert, and this was discussed as well, in his testimony, he said that accidents happen and will happen. Yet no recovery plan, no accident recovery, or what we called it in information engineering, no disaster recovery plan was identified, discussed, laid out. How will the residents be protected and alternate drinking water be provided should an accident occur? What water testing would be done throughout the process? Who finances the cleanup should it have to happen? Where are those legal agreements for who would be involved? How are uncontrollable factors accounted for, weather, floods, and drought? Mr. Ebert also had said that there will be odors, but that they will stay on the property. Later on, he said that the odors will all flow downhill. So you need to remember that this wastewater treatment plant and the drip field are near residents, the Saddle Club, and proposed walking trails for the I-2 zone. Odors from wastewater treatment plants are notoriously bad, and odors, depending on their source, are considered pollutants that can cause health problems. So this is not a compatible use for a residential area. Charlie talked about the environmental sensitive protection areas. Because it is a recharge area, it's not allowed in your zoning ordinance. The wastewater treatment plant for the RPL Logistics Park is currently at its initial stage, basing usage estimates for hypothetical numbers and types of tenants. The plant is designed to be increased in capacity by 100,000 gallons at a time. So future drip fields will need to be allow for that expansion. With the request in front of you, only the developer of the industrial park will benefit from this, not the resident of the town. So please do not allow the special exception use with this residentially zoned property or any other residentially zoned properties in the future. So please remember that this is effluent from a large industrial park, not a commercial or residential municipality, as some testimony has referenced. It is not just the residents that have spoken to protect their rights, but it has been in township studies and plans, including the comprehensive plan and the draft 537 plan to control growth in the town in such a way to protect the citizens and the rural character of the town. All that being said, as you are considering the details from the testimonies given, please remember the big picture to make your decision. The Board of Supervisors ordered the municipal authority to be dissolved. The tenants of the park are unknown. The effluent composition is unknown, and I won't go into all the details that Mr. Elliott provided about things that were not in the information. But the overall, it's, the composition of the effluent to be irrigated, a site vegetation management plan, and a water budget that quantifies storage requirements accounting for weather-related system downtime and lower hydraulic loading rates to address nitrate leaching concerns. These are essential components of a complete design. How does this plan fit with the UMBT Act 537 sewage facilities plan if that document, in effect, is from way before RPO was here and designed? The required DEP permit has not been approved. based on what Bob Lewis said last night, the permit has gone through 2 reiterations. Charlie mentioned tonight that there actually is no permit in place for the wastewater disposal. The other permit was for the other thing. So there's not even an application, and the other permit has not been approved. All right. I have read that removing water from one basin and returning it into a different one is against best management practices. The review and recommendation from the Planning Commission occurred one night before this hearing. They voted to not give a recommendation. That is neither a recommendation nor an approval. There are just too many unknowns and plans based on hypothetical information. Please do not approve this special exception. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Engel, you did have an opportunity as a party, right?
What's that?
You did have an opportunity as a party.
I did opportunity for what?
You did have an opportunity as a party to testify.
Yes, but now I'm here as a citizen. As they pointed out, they're citizens. I'm a citizen.
You guys are all right with that, I assume?
I think I'm still.
You're not.
They wouldn't be in favor of it. I can assure you I will keep it short. Okay.
He's by fool represents himself.
Exactly. They're up on the wires.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I sure do. You know, I've sat here through all these meetings. I don't think I missed any of them. And I would just say, as a former member of the zoning hearing board, they can certainly deny this request, or they can grant this request with and put conditions in it. And I think some of the arguments here were pretty good arguments. I don't see, based on what was said before, and the evidence was presented here, that industrial waste could get over into drip irrigation, because there were several stop gaps in that whole thing that would shut it down if it did. And there was, I think, a 300,000 gallon holding tank that would fill up and stop. None of it would get over there. But again, they can certainly put any of those conditions in there. I think they're reasonable conditions. If they do grant it, they can grant it with conditions. But I just want to say what's kind of sad here is nobody wants to deal with Act 37. I hear people worried about their water, and I own adjoining property. Not down the street a ways. I have an adjoining property that I still own there. And frankly, we've needed an Act 537 plan here for many years. There's loads of people in the township right now are drinking water that they shouldn't be drinking because of the situation, especially on 611. I don't want to get into details because it upsets people's lives and they're trying to deal with it. But I would just like to finish up by saying this. I heard everybody give their qualifications, so I thought maybe I could give mine. I barely got out of Bangor High School. I think was a B- student. But I later became the school board president. I joined the Marine Corps, and I was in the Presidential Honor Guard. Now, I'm not so sure I'd want to be there today because it's kind of a more dangerous position, guarding the President of the United States. So I'm glad I was in the 60s. And after that, I've served my country. I served my school board. I served my township. I've served the borough of Portland. And I served the county. I've served everywhere. And I've been in favor of some things, and I've been opposed to some things. And people have a right to be opposed. It's what America is about. People have a right to be in favor. And this board here has a decision to make, and I'm sure they'll look it over and make the decision they feel is the best decision. But the last thing I want to say was the one expert that was here on real estate, I heard all of his qualifications. I mean, he belonged to more organizations than anybody I think I've ever known in my lifetime. But he basically had no knowledge of Upper Mount Bethel real estate. And I have stacks this big next to my chair of documents that I've kept. I don't need to bring them tonight because I can speak to you from what I want to say. I've looked at these arguments about the price of real estate that adjoin or a mile away or 2 miles away. Frankly, that was totally incorrect. And I don't think anybody in this room would dispute my knowledge of real estate in Upper Mount Bethel Township. That argument of deteriorated values because of the drip irrigation, frankly, is totally inaccurate. I can't find it anywhere in all my research. But I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm glad I kept it short, and good luck, and I'm sure you'll deliberate and make a fair decision. Thank you, gentlemen.
Dare me what?
Well,
Are you gonna say that you didn't testify too?
Mr. Engel just got up to testify.
No, my question is gonna be,
Oh, no.
you did testify.
I did,
Okay.
but as he is, I'm here as a citizen.
Well, I mean,
What?
there's no rules here, so.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
I wasn't here before, so please just say your name.
Sharon Duffield, 554 Potomac. Sorry about that. There were some questions asked, and there's been comments made about odors. And when Mr. Tripoli asked one, I thought I would just mention some things that are in the minutes for East Brandywine. And those are systems that Mr. Ebert was involved with in January of 2022. It's noted in the minutes at Estates at Dowland Forge, which is part of that community system. The Estates at Dowland Forge. This is the East Brandywine Township Municipal Authority minutes from January 11th of 2022. And it states, the Township Fire Department recently responded to resident complaints about a propane smell. Fire officials determined it was sewer odors. Mr. Boldez said the complaints were in the vicinity of Pump Station 2. Manholes were open and wastewater was observed to be flowing normally. So weird stuff does happen.
So we don't know that that has anything to do with the plant that Mr. Ebert talked about.
All I know is it's in the East Brandywine Township minutes for the municipal authority at the Estates at Dowland Forge. And if I remember properly.
That's not the development he talked about.
Okay, let's talk about Apple Cross. That's a development I talked about.
Hang on.
I'm just trying to
No,
clarify.
no. Give me a second.
Yes,
I just wanna clarify.
yes.
And I'm gonna let you go on. I just
Okay.
wanna clarify something.
Thank
You testified as a witness.
Mhm.
And then at the last meeting when we started public comment, you were the first person that got up and commented. And now,
Well, not by volunteering, but yes.
did someone force you to come up here?
No, I
Well,
wasn't
what else
at
would it
public
be?
comment. I was the first one to testify just because they pointed to me and said, you're going first. I've never given public comment.
Did you not come in last time with all of the real estate information and talk about all of that?
That was as a testimony as a witness, was
Nobody
it
called
not?
you as a witness.
Yes, Mr. Blasey did.
She testified before I did.
All right.
I was the
all right,
first
all
one.
right.
I'm sorry, Chad, it's affecting everybody's brains. So, in the discussions about odors, other people have mentioned it. I just wanted to mention, it was even mentioned in that neck of the woods. And then people are talking about possible failures, and I also wanted to mention that there are things that do go wrong, and in Applecross, which is one of the items that was being talked about, and those in the minutes of September 12th of 2023.
This is hearsay.
It's in official minutes to a township
Still
meeting,
hearsay.
and it talks
Sorry,
about
what was the date again?
September 12th of 23. It talks about different problems they were having in pumps and meters in pump station C. It talks about Hillendale, which is in that same complex.
What complex?
Hillendale, which is part of the community system for Applecross, Mapleview, Keats Glen, Hillendale, Hideaway Farms, McCloskey Plank. This is all part of the community system, and it talks about commercial and electrical issues making the valves unable to open and close to drip zones 1 through 6. It talks about Keystone having to replace the programmable logic controller in the control panel and reinstalling the program to restore. I know it's complicated stuff. It talks about troubleshooting communication and electrical issues, making the valves unable to open and close to drip zones 1 through 6. It talks about Keystone replacing the programmable logic controller in the control panel and reinstalling the program to the PLC to restore dosing to zone 1. It talks about solenoids being replaced in zones 2, 4, and 6. It talks about an issue remaining with dosing to zone 3 due to possible damage to electrical wiring. I won't go on. The point I'm trying to make is
stuff happens. And as a resident in the township, I'm concerned about the overall picture, not just for me, but I'm concerned about the township overall and what's going to happen with something like this going in on a residentially zoned property. And I know Mr. Engel will present to you his real estate expertise, and I guess he's pretty good because he did sell this to RPL after all. But what we do know, and I can speak to from living there, is people are leaving, and it is affecting things. And how is that going to affect our community overall? That really, truly does worry me. And the health effects really, truly worry me. There's a ton of water going on there. It's general industrial treated wastewater, and that worries me. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, I see no one else, no other hands. Couple of housekeeping matters before we kind of wrap this up. That will be the end of public comment, okay? The only thing we're doing next time is summations from the attorneys and deliberations, okay? I did ask, I know I asked Mr. Birmingham last time when he testified, and I asked Mr. Cousins if the township could give me
Yeah, you would have had it when Attorney Blasey was.
That's what I'm saying, is can I just have that
To
for,
you and the board.
any recommended conditions?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess I would suggest to anyone who has party status, I would recommend submitting any suggested conditions just to consider, okay? So please, if you could get those to me in writing, I would at least like the board to have those in writing during deliberations, that would be great. Now we gotta figure out when we're coming back.
Chad, you don't want me to take?
Oh, if you want to, yeah, we can.
I'll make.
It's up to you.
I'll make my closing argument now.
Okay.
And then, as long as what we're saying is Doug Blasey's gonna make his closing argument and we're done, if Adrian wants to make a closing argument, but we're done. Testimony's closed.
I'm just concerned about Attorney Blasey not being here for closed. That's my only concern.
Well, I mean, he's listening, I mean, he gets
Listening,
transcript.
but then if, somebody.
I mean,
Mark's.
we're coming back either way, Mark.
Brief, I
Mark, we're coming back.
do it all at once.
We're coming back.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about?
Yeah, so dates. The 8th and the 10th, well, I gotta call. Yeah, we can go off the record for this. I'm gonna call Mr. Blasey and try to get him. What's that?
10th will not work.
10th does not.
Well, the 8th, either the 8th or the 10th works.
Yeah. 10th is not good for you.
Maybe. Could the 8th be good for you, No. Not me. Leave me out.
What about the week, what about the 1st or the 3rd? Let me call Mr. Blasey.
I don't think that works.
I think I'm good. Leo. Doc?
Did you say the 3rd?
1st or the 3rd is the week before. Thursday. Doug, it's Chad DeFelice. Chad DeFelice. Yeah, I'm just calling because we're just discussing dates, so I'm gonna put you on speaker, so. Okay.
I think the 3rd works.
All right, so Doug, for now, Adrian, that's good for you?
The 3rd is okay.
Third?
October 3rd.
Everybody? Yes. Good.
Okay, all right, it seems. Yeah, 10th doesn't work for the board. Or Adrian, yeah, I'm sorry.
Adrian's full.
So the 3rd.
Third. Be here, be gone.
Okay, all right, the 3rd, okay? October 3rd.
Here?
We'll be back here?
I don't know yet.
I don't think that worked for Mark. I think you said it didn't work. I don't know, Adrian, if that works for you.
Check the availability of the fire.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out now. We don't know yet. Well, maybe somewhere.
The other 2 dates, not just the third.
What's that?
I asked her for the 8th and the
10th.
10th, and she said that was okay. And now it's 9:34, so I don't know.
Would the municipal building be okay on the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing on the third.
I mean, I don't have an issue with the municipal building if that's okay with you. It's not.
Great way to finish it out.
Well.
In the garage.
Yeah, in the garage. At least it won't be, 95 degrees out, so. Okay, so we're gonna do October 3rd, 7 o'clock at the municipal building in the garage. So that will be the notice, just like every other meeting, so. Okay?
Got it, Dan.
You all right, Doug? Yeah. Okay, all right.
So, wait, before you let Doug go,
He's talking. Okay, well, I certainly hope not.
so you asked us to give you proposed findings of fact. I'll do it next week.
I think. Yeah. And I know you had said that you were gonna give me findings of fact, conclusions of law. I know you had said that.
Well, can we pick a date when all 3 of us have to submit a findings of fact?
Yeah. I would say just at least before the next hearing. Second. Hang on 1 second. I would say if you could get those to me by the 2nd so that I could get them to the board members.
How about the previous Friday?
Findings of fact, conclusions of law. It's only a week apart.
Whatever you want.
All right, the 2nd, okay? If you can get the findings of fact, conclusions of law to me by the 2nd, that's what I need. And, and any recommended conditions. Okay? And I had said that to your client, so they're well aware, so. Okay? All right, we're gonna go, okay? Thanks, Doug. Okay, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, is that finding of facts conclusion, is that something that's open to the public?
What do you mean open to the public? Like when you get a copy of it?
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, you can go, they will be available to the township probably after the 3rd. I mean,
I don't know,
yeah,
most of us don't know really know what it is.
so it's just gonna be a document of all of the relevant facts that each party thinks the board should consider. And then a legal analysis, typically, conclusions of law, a legal analysis of why they think what they think. So it's essentially an argument.
So at some point, the township will have a copy
Correct.
of the 3 of them.
Correct.
And,
Yes.
and we could see it at that time,
Correct.
after a decision has been made.
Well, if I'm only getting them on the 2nd, I'm not quite sure how I would be able to give them to the public by the 3rd.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, they'll be in the file with the township that anyone can go and review.
Because if I'm not mistaken, this is something that can become pretty important if it becomes challenged into the,
I mean, it's essentially their arguments. So it's just whatever either side thinks. So, I mean, from the standpoint that it has any, it's not evidence. Let me put it that way. Okay? So it's not evidence, it's simply argument from either side of what they think is important.
okay.
have to go and then try to surmise what the other parties think is important. I'd rather not do that, because there's a chance that I'd miss something, so I'd rather you tell me what you think is important as a party, so, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Housekeeping questions? Go ahead.
In the last meeting, you said you wanted a list of conditions from the supervisors.
Yep.
And you want it by the 3rd.
Yes.
I think the board would be more thorough than our planning commission, which took a whole 30 minutes to decide if there would take weeks, possibly months, to come up with a thorough evaluation of this situation.
We have the record
I mean,
You are consistent, I'll tell you that.
well, thank you. I consider that a compliment from me.
I mean, I did ask that this be addressed last meeting. I mean, I think the transcript's gonna be pretty clear that I did ask Mr. Birmingham to please get the board to give me a list of them, right? I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but, I mean, if you're asking that we delay this so that the
No,
board
I'm not asking you that.
can perform some
As
sort
far
of.
as I'm
thorough
concerned, everything has been presented in front of the planning commission in this. I don't know if the board could ask for conditions, even if we did, would they be implemented?
I mean, you have an engineer, you have an attorney, you've had multiple expert witnesses from the other parties to,
It's my contention the planning commission should have asked for all these conditions, that's their
but
job.
what conditions would they have asked for?
The same thing
Did
you're
the
looking for from the
township-
supervisors.
But did the township show up with a witness that said, I think that these conditions would be appropriate?
I don't know.
Point of order, can I raise a question? Are the supervisors represented here tonight by council, am I correct? By two councils?
Let's go back to the record. I mean, look, if we're gonna get to this, I thought this was gonna be a housekeeping
You already
question.
have your council saying. right
Hang
here,
on, hang on,
taxpayers
Mr.
are
Angle,
paying
Mr.
for it.
Angle, Mr. Angle, hang on.
Wait, there's something very simple. If nobody is required to submit
Yeah,
findings
that's true,
of fact
that's true.
of conclusions of law, I'm willing to do it. I assume Doug's willing to do it. If Adrian wants to do it, or the board wants him to do it, he'll do it. If not, you'll make your decision, and it's really to help you write an opinion. That's what it's really about.
Your attorney, tell them what you want.
Ron, stop, please.
I mean, this project, according to many people here, including an expert that testified that people have been known about this project for 3, 4, 5 years because it's affected their property tax, doesn't jive with this now notion that nobody has had time to come up with conditions. And now, I assume the suggestion is that we should postpone the next meeting until the board had adequate time to come up with these conditions.
They'd love to do that.
What was it? Guys, he's your client.
There's no request pending before this board to delay submission of any written findings of fact, conclusions of law, or conditions. They'll be done.
Okay. Okay. And that's it. Mr. Cole.
As an environmental engineer, I don't care whether you call me an expert or a resident, coming up with conditions is a long, arduous process if it's going to happen. It shouldn't just happen.
How long would that take?
It's
No, I want to ask you, how long would that take? When you say long and arduous process, how long would that take? Huh?
Probably analyze it a couple months,
You mean like 7 months?
2 or 3 months, where you would have the engineers, the economists, a lot of people looking. If I were to be asked, okay, put that on there, what are the conditions? You'd have to be talking to a lot of people. I may be called an expert environmental engineer, but you'd need to be talking to the economists, the soil scientists,
And when are you suggesting that that should have happened?
At the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Thank you. I appreciate that. thank
And
you.
it
It
didn't
should have happened at the beginning, I agree with you.
It didn't happen.
100% I agree with you.
We're doing it
I agree with you
backwards.
100%. I agree with you
Hey,
100%.
there's a real misnomer here. I was gonna save it for closing, but let's take 2 seconds. and
Yes,
def-
Doug, you're on speaker.
Let's take 2 seconds.
Hang on.
And define what is before this board. There's a request for a special exception. There are 2 or 3 questions that is the entire scope of what the board is to decide. The first question is what we are asking for allowed as a special exception? That's the first thing. The zoning officer's decision says that this is permitted by special exception. The next thing is from our obligation is to satisfy the objective conditions for that special exception. Quite frankly, there are no objective criteria in the ordinance. However, I put on all those witnesses way beyond what we needed to do to give you a complete picture. Once we show we comply with the objective standards, the burden of proof shifts to the objectors. And the objectors, the court says, they have a very high threshold. They've got to prove by very high probability that this drip irrigation facility that we're talking about would be much worse than a normal drip irrigation facility. They put no testimony on. The testimony they put on was Dr. Elliott, who very clearly said in his document and in his testimony that this type of drip irrigation facility is safe and used all over. There's no testimony here that is credible, that is based in science, that this drip irrigation facility is going to be harmful, even worse, more harmful than an ordinary system. So the whole scope of what's before this board is not what an economist says, it's not what another engineer says. And remember, the testimony is by my client and by Dr. Elliott that this will be reviewed by DEP. We are at the start of the process. For Mrs. Clark to say there's no proof that it'll work, it's not permitted, that's right. It's not, because this is the first step in the permitting process. So just please remember, this is the start of the process. It's a very narrow proceeding before you, and we want to get on with it.
Okay, Doug, what did you have? Yeah, did you need something specific? Or did you just want to?
I think he's finished his closing.
We are.
It could be a denial because of a lack of information.
All right, that's it, all right, we're gonna leave.
Over now.
Okay. Mr. Cole, go ahead.
Say go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Elliott's testimony has been misinterpreted so many times. He said that this should not be approved until the composition of the effluent is known. And there were 2 other things that I don't remember. I don't have his testimony here. So that's falsehood. What he's saying, it can be drip irrigation and application to soil under certain conditions beneficial. but he said for this, it should not be approved, period.
That's not what he said, but
Yes,
the
it
record
Can't
will,
read that.
the record will say what it
Mark,
said.
come on, Mark, I'm trying to get out of here.
All right, well,
I'm
let's
trying to
go.
get everybody out of
All right, let's go.
All right. All right.
Yeah. So moved.
Second.
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 All those in favor?